10 underground rock bands. Bands you've probably never put a name to, but I'd bet money you felt their fingerprints on a dozen songs you do know. This isn't another list of bands that deserved more. These are the ones who shaped everything that came after them, while staying almost completely invisible the entire time. Some broke up before their masterpiece even hit shelves. Some walked away from fame on purpose. One of them inspired a 13-year-old kid who'd go on to front one of the biggest rock bands on earth, and barely anyone connects the two. So if you've ever dug through a used record bin looking for something nobody else had found yet, you already know exactly why we're here. Let's start digging. Number 10. Royal Trux. If you want to understand this band, you need to understand the deal they made with Virgin Records. Because it's one of the great wait what moments in rock business history. Neil Haggerty and Jennifer Harema had known each other since they were teenagers. Building a sound together that was deliberately strange, noisy, sprawling, impossible to market. By the mid-90s, major labels were desperate for the next Nirvana, and somehow Royal Trux convinced Virgin Records to sign them to a 3-record deal. Here's what's wild. They never tried to write a single. They made exactly the uncompromising music they wanted to make, took Virgin's money, and when the label finally cut them loose, Royal Trux turned around and self-released what a lot of people consider their best record through a tiny independent label instead. They got paid to be themselves and walked away clean. I'd argue that's one of the most underrated power moves in 90s rock. Some people see it as a happy accident. I see it as two artists who understood exactly what they were doing the whole time. But the story isn't all victory. Behind the scenes, the partnership that built Royal Trux, creative and personal both, was unraveling under the weight of addiction that nearly swallowed both of them. In 2001, after more than a decade together, the band split, and it wasn't a clean break. Haggerty and Harema barely spoke for the next 14 years. 14 years. Think about that. Two people who'd built an entire creative language together, going over a decade without really talking. If you've ever watched something you built with someone you trusted just go quiet, not from one fight, just from the weight of everything, you know that's a specific kind of grief. Then, in 2015, out of nowhere, they got back on a stage together, and it worked. They've been making music together ever since. Proof that some things really do come back around, just not on any schedule anyone could have predicted. Number 9. The Replacements. Formed in Minneapolis in 1979 by Paul Westerberg, Bob Stinson, his younger brother Tommy, and drummer Chris Mars. If you know one thing about this band, it's probably that they were brilliant. If you know two things, the second one is that they were an absolute mess live, on purpose, almost every single time. Albums like Let It Be and Tim turned them into the band critics couldn't stop championing. the kind of group other musicians treated like a secret password. But here's the thing about the Replacements. They seemed almost allergic to their own success. In 1986, they got invited onto Saturday Night Live, a massive platform for a band still scraping by on indie label money. They played drunk, genuinely, visibly drunk, banned from the show for life, on the spot. You know how that feels, watching someone sabotage the exact moment they'd been waiting for? It's maddening and a little bit beautiful at the same time, because it was so completely them. That same year, guitarist Bob Stinson, the guy who'd literally started the band by handing his 11-year-old brother a bass guitar, was kicked out. His substance abuse finally too much for the group to keep functioning around. The band carried on without him, even scored their closest thing to a real hit in 1989 with I'll Be You, which topped the modern rock charts. But the band that had been four was never quite whole again after that. Here's the part that still hurts. Bob Stinson died in 1995, just 2 weeks after he'd finally gotten sober. 4 years after the band itself had broken up for good in 1991. The Replacements reunited briefly between 2012 and 2015. Playing their first shows together in over 20 years, before calling it quits again, quietly this time, no SNL drama required. What they left behind wasn't really about chart positions. It was about teaching a generation of musicians that vulnerability and chaos could live in the same 3 minutes of a song.
Let's look at the numbers. Only 9% of you are actually subscribed. Honestly, that's tough to see. Our team spends days hunting down archives and verifying every single fact just to tell these stories right. If you've made it this far into the video, you're clearly part of the community, so please hit subscribe. It costs nothing and helps us immensely. Now, for those already subscribed, very few of you have made the jump to our membership, and that's a hard pill to swallow because you're the ones who know our value best. If this channel has moved you or inspired you, consider joining. It's the price of one coffee, but it's the literal fuel for this channel. Let's keep this alive together. Back to the story.
Number 8, Mission of Burma. Here's a band that got taken down, not by a feud, not by a label, but by something almost nobody saw coming, their own volume. Roger Miller, Clint Conley, and Peter Prescott built a sound that was loud on purpose, layered with tape loops and feedback. Courtesy of a fourth member, Martin Swope, who never even held an instrument on stage. By 1983, they were genuinely on the edge of breaking through, and that's exactly when Miller's hearing gave out. Years in front of those amplifiers had caused severe tinnitus, that constant ringing that never goes away. And it got bad enough that the band had no choice but to call it. They played a farewell tour with Miller wearing rifle-range earphones underneath his regular earplugs, just to make it through the shows. How do you come back from that? For almost 20 years, you don't. Mission of Burma stayed broken up from 1983 all the way to 2002. But here's the wait what part of this one. One of their songs, That's When I Reach for My Revolver, barely registered outside the Boston scene back in 1982. Then in 1996, of all people, electronic musician Moby covered it, and Moby's version became a legitimate hit. A song almost nobody heard the first time around became somebody else's massive moment, more than a decade later. While the band that wrote it was still sitting on the sidelines. That's a specific kind of strange. Writing something that becomes huge for someone else, while you're not even in the room for it. When Mission of Burma finally did reform in 2002, they got smarter about it. They limit themselves to short tours now, a long weekend every few months. Specifically to protect what's left of Miller's hearing. They've put out 4 more albums since reuniting, and by most accounts, the new stuff stands right up next to the old. Number 7. Drive Like Jehu. San Diego, 1990. And I want to be upfront. This is one of the more bittersweet entries on this list, so stay with me. Rick Froberg and John Reese had already played together for years in a band called Pitchfork before they linked up with bassist Mike Kennedy and drummer Mark Trombino to form something heavier, weirder, and more technically demanding. Songs that stretched past 7 minutes, full of tension that built and broke and built again. Their 1994 album Yank Crime is still considered one of the defining records of post-hardcore. You can hear its fingerprints in emo, in math rock, in half the bands that came after. Here's what's different about this one, though. Drive Like Jehu never broke up. Not officially. They just stopped playing together in 1995, mostly because Race wanted to focus on his other band, Rocket from the Crypt. No press release, no farewell show. They simply went quiet, the way a conversation trails off when both people already know it's over. For almost 20 years, that was the whole story. Then, in 2014, something genuinely strange happened. The band reunited for one show at an organ pavilion in a San Diego park, performing alongside the city's actual civic organist. Not exactly the reunion anyone would have predicted, but it worked. And it led to real touring after. I have to tell you something hard now. In 2023, Rick Froberg passed away suddenly, at 55. His longtime partner, John Reese, said losing him meant losing his favorite singer, his favorite visual artist, and one of his closest friends, all at once. If you've ever lost someone you built something with, really built, not just worked alongside, you know the silence afterward sounds different than any other silence. The music is still there. The person who helped make it isn't. Drive Like Jehu's catalog is small, 2 albums, but it's the kind of small catalog that keeps getting rediscovered, because the songs were never really about the moment they were made in. Number 6, Hüsker Dü. St. Paul, Minnesota, 1979. Bob Mould, Grant Hart, and Greg Norton started out as one of the fastest, loudest hardcore bands in the country. And then did something almost nobody in hardcore was doing at the time. They got melodic. By 1984's Zen Arcade, a sprawling double album, they'd basically built a blueprint that half of 90s alternative rock would quietly follow. Here's the thing. In 1986, Hüsker Dü signed to Warner Brothers, one of the very first bands from the American underground to go major label and somehow keep creative control while doing it. On paper, that's the dream. In practice, it set off the chain of events that ended them. The band's two songwriters, Mold and Hart, had always split duties evenly. But the pressure of the major label deal cracked that balance, and the arguments over whose songs made the cut got ugly. Then, right on the eve of their final tour, the band's manager took his own life. I know that's heavy to sit with, but it's part of the truth of why this band ended the way it did. In January 1988, for good. Want to know the strangest part? Mold and Hart played together exactly once after that, at a 2004 benefit show for a dying friend. One song, one moment, then nothing again. Grant Hart died of liver cancer in 2017. Bob Mould posted a tribute calling him a frightening talent and a gifted storyteller. They never got the chance to fully make peace with each other on a stage again. And yet, Nirvana's bassist has said flatly that Hüsker Dü did what Nirvana did years earlier. Green Day's Billie Joe Armstrong has said there'd be no Green Day without them. That kind of legacy comes with a strange cost, being the reason a sound exists without ever getting to cash in on it yourself. Number 5, Big Black. Steve Albini started this band in 1981 while he was still a journalism student. And built it almost entirely around a drum machine instead of a human drummer, which, in 1981, was a genuinely strange choice that ended up defining the band's sound completely. By 1986's Atomizer, Big Black had become one of the most viscerally intense bands in the American underground. And then, right as the momentum was building towards something bigger, Albini did something almost no one in this position does. He announced the band's breakup in advance, on purpose, specifically because he didn't want Big Black to turn into a spectacle. He wanted out before it got too big and uncontrollable. I'd argue that's one of the gutsiest moves on this entire list. Choosing the end before anyone forces it on you. Not everybody agrees. Plenty of fans wanted more. But Albini got exactly what he wanted. A clean exit, a farewell tour, and a final show in Seattle where the band smashed their own instruments on stage and walked away. Here's what's wild, though. The album they released right after breaking up, with a title so blunt it couldn't even be printed on most record store signage, became their best-selling record. They went out, and then sold more records than they ever had while active. Albini didn't disappear from music. He became one of the most important recording engineers alive. The guy behind Nirvana's In Utero, the Pixies' Surfer Rosa, PJ Harvey's most raw record. He started a new band, Shellac, in 1992, and kept making music on his own terms for 3 more decades. Then, on May 7, 2024, Albini died of a heart attack. 9 days before Shellac's final album was set to come out. He never got to see people hear it. That's a different kind of loss. Not the band falling apart. The man behind 3 decades of decisions, finally running out of time, right before the very last one arrived. Number 4, the Jesus Lizard. Formed in Austin in 1987 by David Yao and David Sims, fresh off the breakup of their old band, with guitarist Dwayne Dennison joining soon after. They moved to Chicago in 1989, found drummer Mac McNeely, and built one of the most physically intense live shows of the entire era. Yao climbing into the crowd mid-song, sometimes barely dressed by the end of the set. Steve Albini recorded 4 of their albums back-to-back, and by the early 90s, the Jesus Lizard had become one of those bands every musician in the underground name-checked. Even if mainstream radio had never heard of them. Here's the wait what part. They released a split single with Nirvana. At the exact moment, Nirvana was becoming the biggest band on the planet. Kurt Cobain genuinely admired what David Yao was doing on stage. That's about as close to crossing over as an underground band gets. And then it just didn't happen. The Jesus Lizard signed to Capitol Records during the major label gold rush that followed Nirvana's breakthrough, everyone betting one of these noise rock bands would be the next big thing. It wasn't them. The alternative explosion swallowed up a different set of bands, and the Jesus Lizard broke up in 1999, still beloved, still influential, still mostly unknown outside the people who already knew. You know what happened next, though? They didn't stay gone. A 2009 reunion turned into more reunions, which turned into actual new material. And in 2024, 26 years after their last album, they released Rack, their first record in over 2 decades. Same chaos, same intensity. Just 26 years later, that's the kind of patience most bands don't get. Most bands break up, and that's the whole story. The Jesus Lizard got to write a second chapter, decades after anyone expected one. Number 3, Swans. New York City, 1982, born straight out of the no-wave scene. Led by a guy named Michael Gira who wanted to strip rock music down to its most physically overwhelming elements. And I mean physically. Early Swans shows were loud enough, by multiple first-hand accounts, to make people in the audience genuinely sick. Not metaphorically. Actually sick. That's not a gimmick. That's a band trying to make you feel something in your body, not just hear it in your ears. Over the years, Swans evolved into something stranger, and honestly, more beautiful. Folding in folk elements, gospel-adjacent vocals, slow-building tension that stretched for 10, 15 minutes at a time. And the list of artists who've cited Swans as an influence reads like a who's who of heavy, experimental music. Members of Nirvana, Tool, Neurosis, Godflesh, bands that went on to sell out arenas while name-dropping a band most of their own fans had never heard of. Here's the part that's almost unbelievable. Michael Gira didn't just break this band up once. He ended Swans completely in 1997, frustrated with the music industry, and walked away to other projects. Then, in 2010, he didn't reunite Swans, he rebuilt it, with new musicians, like starting the whole thing over from scratch. That version put out some of the most acclaimed records of the band's entire career. Then in 2017, he ended that lineup too, on his own terms, before restarting again in 2019. Three different endings, three different beginnings. A band that has never once let outside forces decide when it was over. That kind of legacy is its own strange trophy. Being the band everyone secretly studied, while almost nobody outside the underground could pick you out of a lineup. It's a quieter kind of fame. But in some ways more permanent, stitched into the DNA of music you already love, instead of sitting on a chart somewhere collecting dust. Number 2, Slint. Louisville, Kentucky. A handful of teenagers, David Pajo, Britt Walford, and eventually Brian McMahon, who'd already been through 2 other local bands before they were even old enough to legally drink, deciding to make something stranger and quieter than anything else happening in American rock at the time. Their first album, Tweez, got recorded by a young Steve Albini in 1989. Their second album is the one that matters here, Spiderland. Recorded in just 4 days in August of 1990, with the vocals written right there in the studio, almost on the spot. Here's the wait what part of this story, and it's a big one. Slint broke up in December of 1990, months before Spiderland was even released. The reasons were personal, including a real struggle with depression one of the members was going through. So when Spiderland finally came out in March of 1991, there was no band left to tour behind it. No interviews, no photo shoots. Just a record sitting quietly on store shelves, with almost no one around to explain it. It barely sold. American critics barely noticed. The only real early champion was, of all people, Steve Albini, who reviewed it in a British music paper and predicted it would become a landmark within a decade. He was right. Now here's the detail nobody saw coming. The back cover of Spiderland included an open call, looking for a female vocalist for whatever the band might become next. One of the people who actually wrote in, completely unknown at the time, was a young singer named PJ Harvey. Nothing came of it. The band was already done. But sit with that alternate timeline for a second. Spiderland is now considered one of the foundational records of an entire genre. Post-rock, math rock, call it what you want. Bands have spent 30 years trying to recreate what 4 kids did in a Kentucky basement before any of them were old enough to know how big it would become. Number 1, Guided by Voices. If there's one story on this entire list that proves it's never too late, this is it. Robert Pollard started this band in Dayton, Ohio in 1983. With childhood friends who'd show up whenever they could to record songs in basements and garages on cheap, consumer-grade 4-track machines. For about a decade, a full decade, almost nobody outside Dayton knew this band existed. Pollard wasn't touring, he wasn't chasing a deal. He was working full-time as an elementary school teacher, going home, and quietly recording dozens and dozens of songs with whichever friends could make it over that night. He financed the early albums himself with small loans from the bank. And this is the part that really gets me. By 1993, Pollard was ready to walk away from the whole project for good. He had a teaching career. He had a family. The math on chasing a music career into his mid-30s just didn't make sense by any normal measure. Then, in 1994, at 36 years old, an age the music industry usually treats as disqualifying, Pollard released an album called B-1000, recorded in 3 days, on almost no budget, full of intentional hiss and tape noise and songs that clocked in under 90 seconds. It became one of the most influential indie rock records of the entire decade. Critics who'd never heard of Guided by Voices suddenly couldn't stop writing about them. Matador Records signed the band. And Robert Pollard, fourth-grade teacher, finally got to quit his day job. That's the part I want you to sit with for a second. A man spent a full decade making music nobody outside his basement was hearing, while raising kids and grading homework, completely unsure if any of it would ever matter to anyone else. And then it did, spectacularly. He's gone on to release dozens upon dozens of albums since, by some counts among the most prolific songwriters in American rock history. Not bad for a guy the industry would have told you, at 35, that it was already too late for. If you've been counting all 12 of these bands, here's what should be obvious by now. Underground doesn't mean small. It means the spotlight just hadn't found you yet.